Hello, Miamians. I'm Kim Tavares from the Miami University Alumni Association, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this session of Winter College 2021. For more than 17 years, Winter College has been the Alumni Association's premier alumni education event, and we are so excited to be able to bring this to a broader audience in our virtual format. You can navigate the full schedule by clicking the View Upcoming Events link under your video screen, and feel free to join the programs while they're in progress. If you can't make it to all of them, that's okay too. They're going to be recorded and posted online. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this session, What Can You Do with an Arts Degree? You can create international blockbusters, with Bill Brzeski, class of 1975. Bill is a highly regarded production designer, art director with more than 30 years of experience in feature films, television, theater, and interior design. He and his wife, Kim, are also Miami mergers. As a production designer, Bill's feature film credits include Universal Pictures' recent release of Furious 7 and international box office hit franchise Iron Man for Marvel. Bill's repeated collaborations with director Todd Phillips include the mega hit comedy The Hangover, for which he received a Best Production Design nomination from the Art Directors Guild. The pair will reunite for their fourth film, the upcoming Arms and the Dudes, for Warner Brothers Pictures. Brzeski's other feature film credits include James L. Brooks' Oscar-winning As Good as It Gets, Rob Reiner's The Bucket List, Stuart Little 2, Flipped, Blue Streak, Jumanji, and Matilda. Our conversation today with Bill will be facilitated by the College of Creative Arts Dean Liz Mullenix. Hi, Liz. Hi, Bill. Thank you guys for joining us.
How you doing?
Great to be here.
Good. And before I turn it over, just a quick reminder that you can submit questions or comments during the live session at the link below the video player or in the comments section on YouTube. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the two of you, and I'll see you later when we have some viewer questions.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kim. Well, it's a joy for me to be here with Bill. Bill, thanks so much for joining us from London, where you are on location with Aquaman 2. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're working right now?
I'm in Leavesden, London, which is in a town of, well, it's right next to a town of Watford. And we're just outside the loop of about 30, maybe 25 miles outside of downtown London. And I'm on the studios. I'm in the offices of where they made all the Harry Potter movies. It used to be a little airfield here about 25 years ago, and they started doing all those movies. They built into a huge studio. So behind me, which we probably can't see too good because the sun's directly is where they did all Harry Potter.
Wow.
Hogwarts is right back there.
Wow. How long have you been in London?
I've been here since around the first of the year, so about 2 months now.
Wow.
It's a little bit after the first.
It's great to know that Hollywood is up and running again a little bit, as so many things are sort of shuttered because of COVID.
No, we are, and it's a lot of work though. We get tested 3 times a week.
Yeah. So,
I mean, it's really, and there's so many protocols, but I have an office out there, we're working and, we have conversations and we have our, everybody has our masks and it's, I don't have it on now because there's nobody here today. And
so. New normal. Well, so Bill, you were a theater major at Miami. And then, after you've gone on to have this incredible career in Hollywood, can you talk a little bit about your journey at, after Miami and how you came to be an art director, production designer after having graduated with a theater major?
I graduated and I moved back home to Boston where I grew up, and I was working in dinner theater, which was theater. And I, started to realize I needed a little more education to get to be the guy who got to design the sets, just not put them up and do that kind of stuff. So I went to NYU. I applied to get into NYU, where Oliver Smith was teaching at the time, and Lloyd Burlingame was running the department. And I got accepted, luckily. And this is in a 76 about. And I went there and got an MFA for 3 years and moved to New York from Boston. And that's where I kind of figured out what to do. And when I got through school, theater was available to work in, but it was very, in New York in the 70s was not the New York now. And it was like, there was work, but not the same kind of work there is now, and not the movie business like it is in New York right now either. And so a lot of us migrated to the West Coast, and I went around and knocked on doors and by 1979, in the fall of 79, I started working with a gentleman named Ray Clausen, and we were actually doing a Las Vegas show, which was theater again, but he also did television. And I started to move into television variety specials, which was like live theater. And I met a gentleman named Roy Christopher eventually, and Roy kind of became my mentor. And through most of the 80s, I worked with him and kind of went on from there and did lots of variety television, multi-camera television. And then one day there was a production designer that quit on the movie Matilda, and I knew Jim Brooks and those people from working at Gracie Films on a bunch of shows they had done, television shows. And so somebody there told me, you should go apply for it. And I did. And I met Danny DeVito, and Danny and I hit it off, and he hired me. And luckily I got that job, and the rest is history.
Wow.
We did, it was a really good job on the movie, and it's kind of a cult classic. I run into all the people I work with are all pretty young still, and they all love that movie. So I kind of like worked on one of their favorite movies. It's like working on The Wizard of Oz to these kids.
Yeah. Well, Danny DeVito he's in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I know our students just love.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of my story.
That's so cool. Well, so, I, as a theater person myself, as a theater professor, I know what a scene designer does. And that was sort of your focus in undergrad, right? You studied with Mike Griffith, our wonderful emeriti professor, who was a mentor to you. And then was your MFA in scene design in the theater?
Yeah. In the 70s, art direction wasn't considered in the theater schools a real thing.
Right.
But it's like architecture or anything else. Design is design. Mm-hmm. And movie design is kind of hard to teach because it involves making movies, and movies are expensive to make, and theater is relatively easy to make. You just need an empty space and some lights and some kids and some costumes and stuff. So we didn't really emphasize it, but if you have the skills to design scenery and tell stories with storytelling with scenery, you have the skills to design movies, commercials, video games, anything that involved visual storytelling, literally anything, on the internet.
And that's what an art director does. Yeah. So for those who don't know what that means, art director, production designer, can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah. Well, art director is literally what it means. You direct the art of something. You can be the art director in a magazine. You can be the art director in theater. We call them set designers in theaters, but William Mendes, who did Gone with the Wind, he coined the frame production designer because he did the costumes, he did the lighting, and he did the scenery. So he said, I designed the whole production. So they call it production designer. Now, I don't design everything in the production, but basically when you go to the movies, like when you see one of my movies, I'm somewhat responsible for everything you see.
Everything.
I don't do every little nuance of the movie. I don't have the ability to do all the costumes and do everything, but I'm involved in it. And I'm involved in setting the tone for the look of the movie. So the costume designer and I would we collaborate on how to do the movie. So we call that production design, but I don't do every visual effect, but I do get involved with what the visual effects should be and, what we're supposed to do. So that's kind of what the job entails. And then it breaks down to, I have a staff I got a room right over here that's probably got 25 kids in it. And they're from art directors and set designers, people who draft, build models. You do all the little basic crafts of making scenery, which is the same craft of like art, of being an architect, building models, drawing, drafting. Designing something is basically designing something. It's how you pre-visualize it to show people what you want to do. But I was just going to say, what we do is storytelling. So there's a special emphasis on how does what I'm doing relate to the story or the written word, which is really maybe the most important difference in all the different things of designers do. And that's the specialty of this. It's got to do with theater and, where I came out of, which gave me a big head start in storytelling. So I will say that.
do you work with the director? Like when you say you're responsible for the look of the entire movie, do you sort of, do they first give you a script and then you talk with the director about, you know, what your vision is for it? Or does the director vision, or is that collaborative? Like, how does that work?
It works with every different kind of director there is. There's a little bit different. I'm working with James Wan right now, who's a great director, really wonderful guy. And he's such a visual person, and he has very high visual skills. So with James, a lot of it is like, he knows exactly what he wants it to look like. So we get into these specificities of things, and I have my opinion, and I'm kind of hired to corral all his ideas together and get them into a cohesive thing. It's like anything, the director is his vision in a play or in theater or in, you know, a video game or whatever is what we all kind of work under, because you can only have one leader in something like this.
Right.
So I do, and some directors don't have any visual imagery. Like Jim Brooks, you know, Jim was used to say to me, I don't know what the movie should look like. I could only see it through a keyhole in a door, but I know what every character in the room is saying. Yeah. So, you know, he was a character writer, and, you know, Jim's movies are pretty famous. And so he didn't get involved.
Yeah.
He'd say, well, I'd show him a picture. That looks like a good idea. And many times a director, when they're not involved, will come on a set and go, this is not what I had in mind.
Okay.
So, you know, but we prevent that from happening by letting everybody know constantly what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't build a building or have a client without showing them what the house is going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a fool if you go that far.
Yeah. Speaking of what it looks like, do you have any, I mean, I know there's so many people watching today who are fans of these movies. Do you have some images that you can show us?
Yeah, I put together a little package from Jumanji, how we built a set. Now, Jumanji, if you guys out there know, they made two of them. I did the second one, the one that just came out last year. And it's, you know, it's got The Rock in it, and Karen Gillan, and, you know, Kevin Hart, and in it, you know, Jack Black. So here, let me, I got to find the thing. Share, here it goes. So. Okay.
So this is a quick little question while you're bringing your things up.
Can you see that?
Oh, here it is. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the question?
Well, I was just going to say, so I mean, this is sort of a silly question, but do you get starstruck ever? Like, I mean, you're working with these actors, these famous actors, right? Like, is there anyone that, do you feel sort of shy around them, or like, how do you handle that?
I have so much respect for these guys. I don't personally become friends with many of them, but I talk to them, and yeah, I'm pretty, you know, the people that do this work are all really at the top of their game.
Yeah.
You have to respect them, and some of the people are amazing. And, you know, and there's some of these people that, you know, these are the kind of people that when they walk into a room, everybody stops talking. So exactly. Yeah, I'm affected the same way.
Yeah.
So no, yes, I do. I mean, you know, and you'd be crazy if you didn't. I've always been, you know, I have a lot of respect. So
yeah, for sure. Okay.
So
yeah.
This is Jumanji, and this gives you a good example of like the stuff I do. This is a lookbook we put together for at the end of the movie, and my graphic designer made this. And I do everything from like start out finding the location. So these are places I scouted on the movie. So you can see the mountains and everything like that. And there was a scene in the movie where they did an oasis. So this concept art is put together with a little bit of Photoshop and stuff like that, and sketches of the oasis in the movie. So this starts out with a really rough sketch like this. It's just a little sketch that Brian Stoltz did for me. And then we go into very high-end concept art, which is done, you know, at very high levels. These are digital models that are built, and they're painted of what the set should look like. And then we go into the how you would design the set. So this is the layout of the set on a stage. Mm-hmm. And the stage was basically a big warehouse in Atlanta, a really big warehouse. It was a big Kroger food distribution center. So that's really what it was. And this is kind of what the set looks like when it's being built. And it kind of evolved to this. You can see it. And this is like the art. This is like a sketch that my friend Christian Schur did for me of the room. And the room looks like this.
Wow.
So you can really, you know, you see, and so, but I'm responsible for this, but my decorators and my people that I work with, like, Daniel Berman, she pulls together all the stuff, and people are their creative jobs all the way through where they have to kind of act on their own and figure it out. So how much costumes? I work a lot with the costume designer.
Wow.
So, here we have some costumes. This is the guy. He was a guy from Game of Thrones. What was it? The Mountain. He played the character.
Oh yeah.
I didn't talk to him too much. But, we have digital creatures here that were done. We had hyenas. These were done at Weta in New Zealand, and some more sketches. And so the big fight scene with the Rock, and we illustrate everything. There is nothing that doesn't get illustrated anymore. It's because people want to know everything, how it's going to look, concept work it's called. And it goes on forever. Here's Karen when she's getting ready to go in this little pond, but we actually built this pond.
Yeah. So I was going to ask about that. Can you go back to that for a sec, Bill, that image? So like when we look at something like that in a film, and that was fascinating to see that Kroger warehouse. I mean, because I always assumed that everything's like animated, like computer animated. But so how much is really physically real, like a real set in a theater or in a film lot, and how much is animated?
I'll show you in a minute. This was real. You can see her up there.
Yeah.
And let me go to the other one here.
Okay.
I have this other one called Aquaman here.
Oh yeah. And that's what you're working on, Aquaman 2, right?
Yeah, I did Aquaman 1. That wasn't in my bio. I forgot to, the bio is a little old there here. So Aquaman 2 is a whole different kettle of fish. Aquaman 2, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
That lighthouse getting bashed with water?
Mm.
Okay, so these are images from Aquaman 2, and this never gets built. This is all virtual. This is what's called virtual scenery. Wow. And it's done by manipulating. This is computer images, and these are stills of what there'll be many images of this. But this was like all the creatures are in the movie.
Wow. And
these models here are digital models that will be taken by ILM or somebody like that to turn into bigger models and stuff. But this is how this gets designed. And it's a misnomer that it's done in a computer because there's nothing that's not designed. Right. And everything that's ever been put into a computer was designed by somebody, and it's got to have a measured drawing. You don't just like say, computer, make me Mira's ship. Wow. And like you don't say, computer, make me Atlantis like this. Wow. These are designs that people sat down and we drew and we measured them and stuff like that. So all this stuff is virtual scenery. Like this ship here, I'm going to show you how it's built. So this was an underwater galleon that they meet in, and this was the set.
Wow.
We actually built this set. Now, this set gets overlaid with a lot of stuff digitally to make it look underwater and stuff like that. But this is how it started, this set. Wow. And if you go like here, I'm going to show you, this here is like a scene where this will be painted into a bigger scene of Atlantis being destroyed. So we don't build all of it. It's kind of like a big Photoshop, a frame at a time. Okay. But they use supercomputers to render these images so real looking that you can't tell they're not real and put them together. So all this stuff is like here, this is what the throne room we want to look like in concept sketch. This is what it looked like on stage. Wow. So we didn't build that. It was underwater. Nobody goes underwater. We do what's called dry for wet. But if you look at it, this is kind of, this here's what's called a proxy set. We have these statues and everything we built for this gladiatorial room where they got their armor. And the backgrounds are all like blue screen. Here you can see, this looks like they're going to get ready to go into the arena. Basically, this was done as another proxy set. When we mean proxy sets, we build scenery to give definition to space and lighting. So all those little tubes in this set here have light going down them. They'll make it look like lava. So it'll look like, like this kind of lava coming out of stuff. And here, I'll show you, you could see how we want it to look with the bottom sequence. And here's Mira in her costume. But up on the top, you can see how it was done on the stage. So we have to know going in what it's going to look like. You just don't show up on the set with a blue screen and say, oh, we'll fix it in post or anything like that. It's all designed. Every little nuance is designed.
Wow.
So these are digital models here of Atlantis right here. That's what these are. These are what they're called white clay models.
And obviously you're not drawing all of this yourself.
No, there isn't enough time in the day for, you ever go to the movies and look at the credits at the end?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's so interesting, right? So then all of those people that are working for you, though, to do each little part of this, you've got to oversee it. You've got to look at it.
Yeah. There's probably 3,000 people worked on this movie.
Wow.
There's a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And like, well, this set here, though, was a traditional set. I built a whole piazza of Italian town. And we actually built this entire city. And then we built this outdoor piece here.
Wow.
But this was done with a huge blue screen. I painted the sky in with Photoshop myself to make it look real. But you see this blue screen back there on the bottom.
Wow.
So, and then this is a little bit of like concept work with Black Manta that the comic book guys did for us. Shows you how they line it out and do it. And this was the final sketch from this.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, there's incredibly talented people. Look at these drawings of Atlantis.
Oh my gosh.
And then these are digital models. See, the sets have to be put into model form so you can move around them in a 3-dimensional way. 2-dimensional drawing doesn't cut it anymore. You really can't. That's a model.
Wow.
You can turn that around in a computer, in a fairly powerful computer, any way you need to. Wow. And this is like the fishermen, and all these people can swim in there, and you don't even know.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy.
Are the actors? So I imagine the actors are now used to working in this kind of half real, half kind of digital atmosphere. Then.
Yeah. Now here's a good example of how a boat is done in the ocean. There's no water, and wow. This was kind of pioneered in Perfect Storm, so it looks kind of like this. And so when we want scenes on it, we do with rain and everything like that, but we put the water all in post. So
you do. Anyway. Wow. That is it. Oh my gosh, Bill, that is fascinating. And so, so when you started making movies, did you know how to do all this, all this computer animating?
I still don't know how to do it all. So I don't know. I didn't. No, I did not. And, to be fair, a lot of it's changed. Like when we started, I mean, it's like anything probably in the last, 40 years. I've been in the business now 40 years. This 41 years, I think. And it's like everything in America and the world. There weren't computers to do all this stuff. So for 75 years, design was pretty much the same. There was paper, there was pens and pencils, and there was hand animation. And you showed your work that way. And there was models and techniques to make movies. But since the age of the digital age, obviously everything that our audience is familiar with is not anything I'm telling them they don't know. I mean, down to me talking to you, sitting in London right now, like it's every day. Everybody's on Zoom. Yeah. Everybody in America talks to their teacher, their family, their moms and dads. I've gotten my 90-year-old mother and father-in-law on Zoom. So I mean, it's pretty common. Yeah. So no, and it's radically changing really fast too, because like you asked about the actors, we do a thing now. We have a whole new level to the art department. We have what's called VAD, Visual Art Department, and we build these models in a visual VR, visual reality. We have a room over here that's got little cameras in it, and so the actors can go into the spaces and learn what they are. Wow. And what we do is we photograph them in this kind of void, and then we use their imagery. They use about 150 cameras on them, and they paint them onto 3-dimensional bodies that have already been built from their bodies. They're and you heard of like super fakes or deep fakes, all those things that people do.
What's that?
Well, it's like they're like you see an image of somebody doing something that's so good you can't tell that it looks real.
Okay.
Well, that's what we do.
Okay.
So when you take 150 pictures of a person, you literally what you do is you stitch it all together, and you can make a perfect model of them and paint it on their model. So
wow. Look, Kim, Kim has popped up, so I bet there's questions.
We had some questions come in that I thought this was probably a good time because they very much relate to what you're talking about relative to how these are done. And so I also wanted to let you know that I have a question from a gentleman named Mike Griffith.
Oh, Good.
Who's he?
So you mentioned him earlier. So yes. But kind of what you were just talking about, Bill, was his question. You made a transition from hand drafting and color illustration on an illustration board, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing things by hand. And now everything's completely digitized.
Yeah,
So
we don't even hire people that can't do that. Though this is the rub of the whole thing. You can't get a job in Hollywood or in any architectural firm or any graphic department unless you're pretty facile on computers. You can't get a job in an office unless you can use Excel and you can use, most of the software that comes in Microsoft Suite. If you can't use it, they're not going to hire you. So that's what you should be learning along with all your other stuff too. Where we had to learn in our day how to draft and draw and all that stuff. That was the tools we were given. But we couldn't use a person if they didn't do it that way. And now I can't hire two-dimensional people. And we're getting to the point now we need three-dimensional models because there's a pipeline set up and the pipeline requires all this information all day long. Mm-hmm. And people send it all over the world on their phones and their iPads and their computers. And there is no room for, the hand-drawn thing, which is kind of sad because it's an art form that's slowly disappearing. And then when it comes to organic stuff, it's still the best way to draw it. But that doesn't mean art's going to go away and people are going to stop drawing, and people shouldn't worry about that. People still paintings, and that form of art is never going to go anywhere. But in our business, you need to be able to mirror that with a digital technology. Mm-hmm.
Do you still use any of the old method of hand illustrating at times when you're working on something like personal here? Yeah.
I still got scale rulers here. No, of course. I can't say, and it sounds like, you don't have to draw anymore, but that's not true. I still have to draw I still draw plans. I still communicate with a pen on a piece of paper all the time. I still, always need to draw something to explain something, what I'm trying to do. Okay. You know what I mean? And if you can't do that a little bit, you're in trouble. I mean, it's the way you train your brain too. I mean, it's just part of the world. Yep. But it is a little different now and plus the kids do come out of school learning all that stuff. So,
And that was actually, we had two questions that came in very similar and to what you just talked about, saying, one was what type of art skills or skills do they need to do the job now, which you just mentioned a little bit, that it's more about the graphic skills computer wise versus the actual hand.
Well, you need both the skills, but you have to be able to mirror the two together.
That's an excellent
point. If you can draw really well, it is a great skill. But if you can draw really well and you don't know how to get it onto the screen of the computer, it's not so good.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so you have to be able to do the two things have to come together now. And all the people that work in this other room, not today, but because it's Saturday, but they have high skills. These kids are really good. And the kids in Miami need to know that you have to be really good. There's good kids all over the world. The crews in London are some of the best I've ever worked with. They're mind-boggling how good these kids are. And you look at the movies they make here, the Harry Potter movies, all those Marvel movies, they're all made here. They're made right across the street here. Right now they have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. They have they got Batman, Flash, and Mission Impossible 5 going on right over there right now. And Aquaman's coming in about 4 weeks. We're going to take over the stages.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah, and that's right over there.
That is.
Yeah. And just one last question of related kind of to the actual, so you got to be really good. We know that. But someone asked, with all the people it takes to make a movie, what other things, what other areas maybe are up and coming in movies, not just in the art direction, but what else do they need to know? What majors are most likely to get hired?
Well, storytelling is still super important, guys. You got to be able to tell a story, and you got to be able to communicate really well. I put a lot of emphasis on presentation and graphics and things like that because with all the clutter in our lives and all the stuff that goes flying by, you have to be able to figure out how to communicate that information in a very succinct sort of way like on what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are skills that can be taught. Kids need to learn how to do that. I mean, it's just part of the world they live in. They live in this visual world, and those things will be so important in the future. And good stories, the content a good story that's simply told. The simplest movie can be the most riveting thing, more than one where we live underwater and we blow up the world all the time. You know what I mean? So I can't emphasize, don't be scared off. You know, if you have a good story to tell and you a good writer, or you're, you know, visually you have some great ideas, or you understand some aspect of life that nobody seems to quite else get, and you can bring it to the story to somebody. Those are good skills. It's probably the most important skills. I will tell you that right now. That you know, the script is what we always start with, and believe me, that's the most important thing still, and that's a big part.
When these kids are sort of applying to be artists, working with you, digital artists, do they have a digital portfolio? Is that what they're showing you?
And they do. Almost every kid's got some kind of digital portfolio now.
Okay.
Nobody even carries a portfolio case in anymore. Who does?
Yeah.
There's no paper you carry.
Right.
I wish somebody did occasionally, but there isn't any. Everybody comes in with a laptop or an iPad Pro, a big one, you know, we sit down, or what we do now. Every room has got a 60-inch to 70-inch monitor in it, and people walk in and they say, hey, share your screen. What do you got? Boom, right comes up on the screen. You're sitting on you're watching it. It's literally in my office, there's about 10 televisions. And sometimes they're playing all the same thing, and it's kind of crazy. It really is.
I mean, when you started 40 years ago, Bill, people I imagine did walk in with a paper portfolio.
Oh, I did till about, I would say 10 years ago. And I used to love my portfolios and stuff like that. But they, you know, you can't like show pictures as fast. And the problem is almost all their work is digitally designed and built. So without a digital way to show it, you spend a fortune in printing of stuff when it's really just all on a screen. You know what I mean? So web pages are free. I mean, they're really easy to make. Everybody knows, most of your audience probably knows how to do it. So you start making one up. But you should collect your stuff. And I'm a big fan of photography still. I mean, I take 100 pictures a day probably. Still.
Wow.
Easily. I was just taking a stroll today in London. I thought I was going to fill my camera up.
Wow.
My phone, basically.
Well, you know, that relates to something I wanted to ask you when you were showing images from Jumanji. Tell us a little bit about the scouting process. Like, do you physically go to those, like, do you go to New Zealand? Do you go, like, tell us some places you've gone?
I've been everywhere. I've been to, you know, I've been all through Thailand, Phuket, down there. I've been all over China.
Wow.
I did a movie in China, Australia, you know, you have to go where they make the movie. And what they do is they send me kind of an advanced party. Now in Jumanji, we shot in many locations. We shot in Calgary because we needed snow. So we shot up in those mountains of Canada. We were in the Four Corner states. We went to Hawaii. And so it's a hard part of the job, actually. You have to go, you work with a location manager and scouts, and you take pictures, and then you bring them back to the studio, or you just send them through your phone, or however you FaceTime, and people like them, they don't. But I have to, part of my job, the visual part of the job, this is where the camera work comes in, is you have to understand how to photograph this stuff and how it will look in the theater, and how does it work as for the background for your movie. So that's part of the production designer's job. It's one of the main things he does, from picking a street in the city to finding something in the city that he could turn into a specific set. Like, how do you turn part of Atlanta into New York City? In Jumanji, we had to make a couple streets look like they were outside the dorms of NYU. That's where the kids were in a snowstorm. So we have to find a little chunk of Atlanta that's got some architecture that looks like that. I've done that in Montreal. I worked in Montreal, you know, all over the place.
Yeah.
Vancouver, I had to do, like, you know, I did Catwoman in that was supposed to be like New York too, in Vancouver. In Atlanta's like one of the big hubs now in America. So there's a lot of work there too. Yeah, but we're always making Atlanta look like someplace else.
Well, I was going to ask about that. You know, are there, you know, I mean, first of all, that's super interesting, right? That you are physically going on location. You know, I think now we think, oh, there's so much computer animation, like you can just do it all in a studio. But it's really interesting to know that you're still shooting films in major.
We do less and less. But here's the issue with shooting on location. It's very difficult because the movie company is large. but but there's something that you still get out of being in the real space.
Yeah.
Like, I shot the 2 Fast and Furious movies. Okay. I did Fast and Furious 7 and Fast and Furious 8. And we did those. They wanted to do a car race in Cuba, and we shot in Havana. And so I had to go to Cuba 3 or 4 times. Now that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been shut down again, but there was this little window open, and we shot a car race all through downtown Havana. And they sent me there to go figure out how to drive the car around Havana. How are we going to do this? Like, we called it the Cuban Mile. We needed a big, huge loop in the city. And that was really fun. So I had to go there, figure it all out. And then they all fly down there, and we walk around, and then they go, "Is this where you want to do it?" And I show them, and, and some of it works, some of it doesn't. And I've meanwhile shown all the pictures, and we've discussed it, and there's maps, and people go with tech scouts, and we measure every street, and we do everything possible to understand how to do it. We do that all over the world.
Yeah.
Movie companies do that, and that's my job. So I've traveled everywhere on this planet, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then, so when you go with the scouting company, does the director go, or you just?
He goes eventually, but he doesn't go in the beginning because they're so busy.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work involved in that.
Yeah.
I mean, so I get on a movie very early, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then they shoot the movie, and then the movie goes into post. That's kind of that's the way we have a saying, the director dates the production designer, he gets engaged to the director of photography, and he marries the editor. So I'm in the beginning.
I love it. That's so good.
That's kind of the way it works.
So and I'll ask, one more question, maybe, because I know that there's probably lots of other folks who are asking questions, and I know lots of our students are watching today, which is wonderful. But you've made so many popular movies. Is there one that you are sort of particularly fond of or proud of? And then on the flip side, is there any that were just super challenging to make, that you were like, "Oh, I'm so glad this is over"?
I like all my movies. I did a movie. I've done some really bombs, and I've done some really successful movies. And I'm constantly asked that question. But the reality of working in the entertainment field, or in music or ballet or opera, whatever you're going to choose, you basically start a career, and it's basically a lot of the same thing. It goes up and down, goes up and down. And I've been kind of making one. I like to say I've been on one movie my whole life, and some of them have been challenging, just from being away from home and how that kind of a thing. And the work is challenging, but so much fun that I don't think of it as like it's been really hard. But it is a challenge because it's really disruptive to your families and stuff like that. It's not easy. I mean, it sounds, Bill got to go to London, but I am in lockdown, and it's not, don't feel sorry for me. But I'm just saying, it's a hard job. These are and they reward you financially very well, but you have to deliver.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yeah, the stakes are high.
They're very high. And if you don't deliver, if you can't play them the music, you can't get in the band. And it's that way in all the arts. The people that are, that want to take it seriously. I mean, I remember the Fast and Furious movies, the one where Paul Walker died was kind of tragic. That was hard in the end. Everybody, that was a kind of an issue. I really was proud of Matilda, because Matilda, I didn't really know what I was doing in the sense of in the feature world, but I kind of treated it like it was a play, and it worked out really well. And nobody told me what to do. And I didn't have any controls on me, because they fired the guy. The guy quit or got fired before me, and they just laid off me. And it turned out really good. And so I was very proud of that, there was no really controls. There's a lot of micromanaging in the movie business. You know what I mean? So this movie that I'm going to do over here is going to be about close to $300 million.
Oh my!
And I have to I'm spending about 35 million, 40 million on scenery, and they're going to spend about close to $100 million in visual effects. So it's like, there's so many people that get involved with those kind of numbers. Just the accounting stuff is crazy.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
Are you physically there when they're shooting? I mean, you are?
Yeah, I show up. It's part of the production and the art director's handbook in Hollywood. You're required to show up when they open the set.
Okay.
We have a union, and that's the rule. You have to be there the day they open the set, and you have to be on the set. And then they open the set, and once the set's open and we start shooting it, I don't have to be there anymore because they can't change anything.
Right. Yeah.
Everything is kind of locked into a continuity thing, so we don't change things too much. But I go. I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, I always enjoy it, and this is the best job in the world.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now.
Yeah,
it's a great job.
Major. The best. I know. It sounds.
Who knew? And you know, Mike Griffith out there. It's your fault, Mike, because I wanted to be you so badly that
We love you, Mike Griffith.
I ended up doing this for my whole life, and you know, so I've had a long career. I mean, it's not over yet, but I'm starting to see, you know, the light at that end of that tunnel too. And but I've been very blessed, and I've been very lucky. I have a great family. They put up with this. I mean, this is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard. And my wife Kim is like, you know, she's a widow several months a year just without me being around. It's hard.
Does Kim join you sometimes?
Yeah, they come, and but it's particularly hard now because of the COVID thing. Yeah. We can't travel so easily. But yes, they come. My children have grown up on sets all over the world. You know what I mean? So they do come. You know. Then
have you ever been? I mean, you're obviously the pandemic has been probably the most massive interruption to your industry and the movie business, but have you ever experienced another, you know, sort of natural disaster or weather or things that just slipped?
Yeah, sets wash away and things like that. Yeah, there's been big rainstorms and stuff. Actually an Aquaman 1. We had a pretty good storm, washed the set right into the ocean. I mean, that kind of stuff does happen. Things burn down, all kinds of crazy things happen. In 40 years, you'd be amazed at stuff that can happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know,
amazing.
I think when I was doing The Nanny, I think we had the pipe broke on the stage, and the stage was it was airtight, and it filled up with 6 feet of water. I remember that, and they opened the door, and the set just washed right out. You know.
Wow. Wow. Why are some cities, like you mentioned Atlanta a lot? Why are some cities? You know, why not just go to New York City? Because it's too hard. There's too much.
No, it's like follow the money. Atlanta. Long story short, Canada back in the late 80s into the 90s started to offer film incentives and got what we called runway production going. And so the movie companies were really adept at like setting up shop anywhere there is if somebody wants to give you a rebate. I mean, you can go I could come to Oxford, Ohio and find a big empty space, go to Millette Hall and put scenery. You know what I mean? And before you know it, we can build huge sets in there, and we know how to do that. That's what we do. We're kind of like gypsies. We can move into any place there is. Someplace in China, someplace in, you know, Australia, we can just go. There's an empty warehouse. And if somebody says, well, if you come here, we'll pay for half the crew, or we'll like England here, they subsidize, the EU used to, but now Britain does again now, subsidize these crews really heavily. So you're crazy not to. New York City's got a real big film incentive, but Atlanta's got 130. It's I think it's a 10 or 11% on you know, all salaries. So they pay tens of millions of dollars back to, you know, above the line salaries. So if somebody like The Rock is making, you know, $30 million on a movie, they give him 10 back.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The state does.
Yeah.
Or they give the studio. So the studio is almost locked into going to cities that have big incentives. And every state has got them. Ohio does too.
Yeah.
I shot in Cleveland. We shot Fast and Furious stuff in Cleveland. We use those streets, you know, Euclid Ave and stuff in downtown Cleveland. Used to be used all the time, but then their incentive didn't cover above the line, so it kind of got weak, and so people don't do as much there. But commercials follow incentives, you know.
Yeah.
Video companies do too. You know, in I guess Montreal is like where a lot of visual effects, and same thing in Vancouver. A lot of video games are done there because they offer big incentives for video artists and, you know, video production.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Is there anywhere that you have to film a lot that you are just like, oh no, I don't, you know, that place is too hard to work in? But no,
I kind of feel that way about Atlanta a little bit. I don't want to say anything negative about any place.
I know.
You know, because Atlanta is really hard because it's not a very big city. It's actually quite small.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of facilities there, but they don't have a big city. Yeah. And if you're doing like a Jumanji, we used the stages there, but we went all over the world.
Yeah.
I was flying from Atlanta to Honolulu, and that's a long flight.
Yeah.
That's 10 hours.
Wow.
So,
wow. Hey, Kim.
Hi.
Questions from the gallery there?
I do. Since we have about 10 minutes left, I wanted to make sure we got to these. So Bill, I have a couple questions for you. One is a question about somebody else's work and see what you think. So somebody wanted to know, what do you think about the volume that was created for the Star Wars TV show, The Mandalorian? Do you think that kind of virtual set is indicative of the future of filmmaking?
We use that right now. We're using that. Yeah, Unreal Engine it's called. It's a gaming platform. They call video game software is called engines. That's, I don't know why, but they have like a whole, and they use it, and we're using it right out in that room there.
Mm-hmm.
I use it like every day. And the Mandalorian, they kind of pioneered it with video. It's kind of a new, with LED screens. They use LED screens. So it works really well in television, because if you go back to a set over and over again, you don't have to build it. So what you do is you build the set and virtually, and then you put a huge wall of video monitors up there. And they're LED screens like you see in a ballpark, but they're a little higher res. There's a higher pixel count. They're very expensive, by the way. None of this stuff's inexpensive. And then you could put anything you want on it. And what you do is then you build, your visual art department will build your set digitally, and you'll create that set. It goes on those screens, and then you put objects in the set, and then you don't know that it's not a digital set, and you can change it immediately. That's how they did the Jungle Book and things like that. You build a volume, and we have a volume too. We're doing it a little differently though, but we're still using Unreal Engine, which is kind of been a game changer, but there's other people doing other things. Yeah.
That's interesting, because that is used by Epic Games too, right? So, and we have a new games major, so I bet there's some similarity in terms of a skill set between a kid that's learning how to build a game and a kid that could work for you.
Well, Epic, the one North Carolina you're talking, Epic, those guys, they kind of pioneered that.
Yeah.
So they're making more money on that than they are on the software. Although they give the software away free, but it involves them, license fees and stuff like that. And it's that stuff's there's quite a few game engines that people use, but that one's been the best. And we can do it on our computers in our offices. It's really brought the amount of power down you need. I mean, we all have laptops, we're familiar with that, but you can't do everything you think you can do on those computers. The PC is still the most powerful computer we use in the business. It's not an Apple Macintosh computer. The people that use, Rhino or Maya or any of that kind of stuff, or Modo, we use a lot of ZBrush, Modo. There's all these software packages that are that use they need a lot of juice to do it to work. So, but yes, that's a big tool, and I just kind of learned it on this movie actually. And I didn't know anything about. I mean, I knew about this stuff, but it wasn't being used, and so we're using it. So the last movie we hung people on wires, and then we took the wires off and put them underwater digitally. This movie we're building a volume for them to fly in, and then we're going to do everything digital. There's not going to be any. It's all the characters are CG, virtual characters, and you can't tell the difference.
Wow!
I saw a test the other day for Flash. I shouldn't say it. I was just blown away with how that. We could not tell in the thing which was the real person, which was a CG person. And they carried on complete conversations like we're talking right now. And you couldn't tell on a big screen.
Bill, you talked about doing these things, on computer and fast computer, but it's still humans who are doing this. How long does something like this take? For example, for Aquaman, how long will you be working on a movie like that?
I'm on Aquaman until next Christmas, then another year of post. So we started basically, it's about 2 to 3 years. Most movies, they have a long life. My life on a movie like this is about 120 days of shooting with about, 40 weeks of prep.
Wow.
And then we're about 40 weeks on this. And then not every movie though, they're small movies. I mean, and you shouldn't, I think it's important that your audience knows that they should not judge everything by these kind of movies, these big movies. There are small movies that are better, that you shoot in about 25 days on a cell phone that are better. So you should know that people come out of the theater and they can't talk because they're so upset or they're so happy. And you know those movies. I mean, so there are movies like that. It's not all about this.
Yeah.
And so you it's important to know that that's part of the storytelling thing. There's theater you go to that you can't, it can floor you, and there are people on a stage talking to you. You know what I mean? I mean, who went to see Hamilton and, you know, come and go, whoa, where did that come from? You know, or something like that, or some amazing opera aria or something, you know, it's not just this. Yeah. I think that's important, and the audience needs to know that this is a living, this is a job, careers and stuff like that. But it's all about visual storytelling. Mm-hmm. And that's the most exciting part of the whole thing. So
good. And that's what somebody noted here, you know, that just wanted to know if you would describe your artistic style a certain way, and noted that As Good as It Gets is very different from something like Aquaman. But are there through lines that are your signature?
Yes, you can tell my work all the time. I mean, I know that because I have a certain color palette taste I go to.
Okay.
I like to build big sets that you need to shoot with big lenses. So I kind of coming out of theater, I was kind of like world building things, because theater is more what we call this world building, where you build everything. Everything's got to be built. There's nothing that you can relate to underwater in an underwater city. Never existed. Stuart Little, all those kind of movies, we built so much scenery because we wanted to set a style and build a world for it. So my movies tend to be that, but I've done some small intimate movies. I did this movie Flip for Rob Reiner, which was one of my favorite movies I've ever done. It was like doing summer stock. I so enjoyed it. I was living in Ann Arbor, near where my mother and father-in-law live. I went home every weekend to see them, my wife. It was just the best time. And it was little. I had I didn't even have $1 million.
Wow.
You know, and I did a lot of the work myself. We painted things, but we really got into the characters. It was about these two children in the early 60s, like 62, 63, and they were actually my age. So I could kind of really relate to them and my upbringing and their homes, and just it didn't do very well. It kind of got, people don't really know about it, but it was really quite a lovely little movie.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
I know.
Go ahead, Liz.
No, I was just going to say.
Even the bucket list. So, the bucket list only costs $32 million to make.
Yeah.
Not the bucket list. I mean, The Hangover.
The Hangover.
Really?
Yeah. The Hangover was a little movie.
Wow. Became a big movie after it was out. Yeah.
Well, it did, yeah. And that was kind of partially my fault too, because Todd they weren't so interested in the scenery of the whole thing. He's a writer. They're more interested in the words and the comedy of the whole thing. And I kept saying, if we could make this look like a studio movie and give it a little bit of pizzazz, this movie's going to do really good. And and we tried to give it what I call studio respect, that it looks good. Yeah. It's not just something it's a comedy, let's just make it, because comedies are short shifted. They don't get they don't always get the respect they deserve, and they're hard to make. They're very hard to make a comedy. If anybody's ever done comedy, they know that. Yeah. And we worked really hard to make that movie have a certain look and have a certain hipness. And, Larry, who shot it, and Todd, who's pretty edgy guy, it turned out okay.
What about the tiger? Are the animals real, and are they like movie star animals, like the tiger and the monkey? I mean,
yeah, all that stuff's real. That monkey is like a movie monkey. Always, I got pictures of that monkey on my shoulder. They had like bunches of monkeys, and that tiger was real. That tiger was in that bathroom with bulges to the floor. It couldn't move. And they just take the chains out, and that tiger was real. We had to make that car that tiger was in, and we took all the stuffing out of it, and we put steaks inside of it in the back of the seat. So the tiger was in the car ripping it apart, trying to get to the meat. I remember that. That was kind of crazy.
That's awesome. Bill, one last quick question. You've intrigued many people when you said you had photography. Do you post it anywhere? Do you have an Instagram that people
I do Instagram.
Follow?
You can go on my site. Yeah, I love photography.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I bought a camera that I looked through, and I think it was like halfway through my movie career, I realized how important it was, because it's how we see it.
Yeah, right.
The movies are shot on film, or they were shot on film. Nobody uses film anymore, but they're still shot through lenses, and they're shot through very complicated lens systems. And if you don't understand that, it won't really help you with what you're putting in front of the lens. So I I started to learn to become a better photographer, and I really love to take pictures. I'm always taking pictures. That's that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm making a visual diary right now of this trip I'm on, because I got time, and so I put it together every night, and it's what I do. I'm obsessed with that. I don't know why. So, but by learning how to use the camera, I've gotten really good, and I know how. And it's all about lighting, guys. It's all what we do. It's like the amount of lighting equipment's changed drastically too because of LEDs. So and we don't need much light anymore because of digital cameras. Yeah. We can shoot with a candle. We can shoot at night. We can shoot in any situation. So lighting has gotten way different. It's not a big mystery. Everybody can do it.
Yeah.
There's no more f-stops, and there's f-stops, but there's no more film emulsion and how to do this and how much light you need to do this kind of speed. Anything can be shot with very inexpensive cameras.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. Bill, this has been so informational and so just cool. Thank you so much. Liz, thank you for being here with us today too. We are out of time, but thank you both so much for such an engaging conversation.
My pleasure. And guys, Miami had everything to do with why I'm here. Okay, just so you know. I have to say that I got to put a plug in for my school.
There you go.
If I hadn't gone there and hadn't met Mike Griffith that day, because it's really important, I think, for people to see somebody that succeeds at something and somebody they think they can be besides their parents, or they'll never leave home. So he offered me that person, and the school, put him there. And, I spent 4 years there. And like I said, I met my wife, and everything, it's like a huge part of my life. And my mother and father-in-law are still in their 90s. They live up in Sandusky. So Ohio is still a big part of my life too. And it's been wonderful. And any chance I get, I try to get down there and just kind of poke around a little bit, just because, I love those toasted rolls or whatever it was. And
we would definitely love to see you back in Oxford when you get through when we get through this pandemic and you get through your shooting schedule there.
Oh, I will. I'll be back.
Pictures here.
I kind of work on they have the board thing there.
Yeah, Bill is on the advisory board for the College of Creative Arts.
Yeah,
great. So thank you so much, Bill, for everything. And for those of you watching live with us, up next is Facing Down a Pandemic, Recent Grads Leading the Way. It's a panel of our recent alumni talking about the pandemic in their different fields. It's moderated by President and Dr. Crawford, and it starts at noon Eastern Time. And just remember that there are unique URLs for each session, so either refer to your registration confirmation or click on the events type at the website's top toolbar here and select Winter College or look for the future view upcoming events. So on behalf of the Miami University Alumni Association, thank you, Bill, thank you, Liz, and thank all of you for joining us today. Goodbye.
Okay, I'll talk to you later, guys.